Basil, you're going to introduce the mayor, I believe, please.
President Gordon, it's my pleasure to introduce Mayor Dan Carter. Mayor Carter was elected in 2018 and is serving his first term as mayor of Oshawa after serving as a city and regional councillor from 2014 to 2018. The mayor is an ex officio member of all city standing committees. At the region of Durham, he currently serves as a member of the Health and Social Services Committee and president of the Durham Region Nonprofit Housing Corporation. Active in community development initiatives, Mayor Carter lends his name to many philanthropic endeavors and has a deep commitment to making a difference to those in need. Mayor Carter takes his role as mayor of Oshawa to heart and feels blessed that he's been given the opportunity to serve and to help people in his community every day. He is committed to leading in a way that will bring out the best in all of us and be the light that brings hope, optimism, and pride to this great city. Please join me in welcoming Mayor Carter.
Oh, thank you very much for that very kind introduction. And, you know, if I was smart, I would just say thank you very much, good afternoon, and walk away, because it's probably not going to get any better than that. So I do appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. I was really looking forward to being with you in person, but of course, these are different times with different challenges and unique ways of connecting. Trudy, I see that you're not by yourself. You got your little one with you, so it's great. It's great to be able to see you in a great environment to expose your little one to it. So it's great to see you.
Thank you.
It's good to see you. So I'm gonna take the next hour and a half just to speak to you. I hope you don't mind. If that's a little too long, you tell me. But I just walked. Matter of fact, I'm in council today, and I was at a council meeting just now, and I had to get my deputy mayor to take over. We thought the meeting would be over by now, but apparently everybody has a lot to say today. I guess it's been built up for a long period of time, so they're speaking a lot. But it is great to be with you. Yes, I am very fortunate to be the 34th mayor of the great city of Oshawa, elected, of course, to this position after serving as a regional and city councillor. And before that, I was a huge TV star in Durham, had 7, maybe 8 people that watched me on a nightly basis. So I was a huge TV star and worked in television for about 25 years. And I'm very, very lucky. I'm originally, by the way, from Agincourt, Ontario. My parents came back from the Second World War in 1945-46, and my father took advantage of receiving 2 acres of land at McCowan and Shepherd. From McCowan and Shepherd to Markham and Shepherd and down to the 401 from Shepherd Avenue down, there was 14 houses, and one of those houses was ours. So that area has changed a little bit. And but I'm originally from Agincourt and grew up with parents that were veterans of the Second World War. Of course, they are both passed now, and I'm survived. Of course, myself and my brother David. 2 of my other siblings, of course, have passed on prior to that. And like I say, my mother and father have also passed. I'm very passionate about a lot of different things, and I've been lucky enough to be able to be have this opportunity to be able to be a public servant. And for me, I still can't believe that I've got the opportunity to be a mayor of a major city. Now, a major city may not compare to Scarborough or Toronto, but in Durham region, we're 172,000 people and growing very rapidly. We're only 57 kilometers, of course, from Toronto to the east. But being a mayor of a major city, especially that 30 years ago, I wouldn't even imagine having this opportunity is pretty extraordinary. And I walk into this office every day and I look around and I see that nameplate in my office. And when I leave at night, I see that nameplate on my door. And I am absolutely humbled by the opportunity that the public here in Durham region have given me. And by the way, I was in Cornwall, Ontario, speaking at the Children's Treatment Center, and that was a wonderful experience. They asked me to come and speak at their breakfast. I thought it was like a Rotary breakfast. There might be 20, 25 people. There's a couple things I learned about Cornwall. One is that the community really is committed in regards to not only the community of Cornwall, but surrounding areas. Two is they have breakfast at 6:30 in the morning, which I found really, kind of unusual. And what else I found out was that they invite 650 people for breakfast, which I didn't expect. And when they were introducing me, they said, this is Mayor Carter from the great city of Oshawa, and he was elected just recently in the 2018 election to become the mayor of the great city of Oshawa. And he won by receiving 70% of the votes. And everybody went, oh, they're very impressed, and everybody was, hushing. And when I went back up to the microphone to be able to start my presentation, I said, what you should know is, I said, one is, it seems that you're very impressed with the 70%, but what you should know is, I was the only guy running for mayor, so really it's not that impressive at all. I mean, if there was other people running, it might have been a little bit. But there was about 5 or 6 other people that ran, but I was just very fortunate to be able to receive that. And I've always approached my public service in a way that I have to be honest with people and just tell them who I am. And I come from great brokenness. And I think that that's why I've had the opportunity to serve. I think it's relatable to the days that we're facing right at this particular time, that we have close to 5,000 Canadians that are dying of opiate overdose across this country. We have 235,000 people that are unsheltered. We have about 40,000 people on a nightly basis that sleep on our streets across this great country. Our poverty rates in our country are escalating. Our middle class has deteriorated, and we are facing very interesting times. Then add on top of it COVID-19. But in my circumstance, I come from quite an interesting background. I was born in 1960. I was the last of 7. Oh, good. I got another 1960 there, so that's a good thing. And I was the last child of 7 born in St. John's, New Brunswick. Early in my very early life, my mother passed away very suddenly. And in 1960, if you had 7 children and one of them was just a newborn, fathers didn't bring up children, and I was put into the care of the Children's Aid Society. Was fortunate enough that I went to many different foster homes and ended up at the foster home of Charles and Isabel Carter in Agincourt, both Second World War veterans. They had 3 of their own children, Michael, Maureen, and David. But they also committed to being able to foster 22 foster children from 1947 right through to about 1962. And so that was pretty impressive. My mother, Isabel, was a nurse in the Second World War. My father was a dispatch rider with the Canadian Army. And so their sense of duty and sense of caring was very much implanted in them. And I was fortunate enough to be adopted by the Carter family, leaving my previous family that I was later had the opportunity to be able to introduce to. But like many people, we go through different periods and different challenges in our lives. When I was very young, going off to school, I had a severe learning disability. It wasn't identified in 1964, 65, 66. So what happened was, when I went off to kindergarten in grade 1, then on to grade 2 and 3 and 4, it was never identified, and therefore I failed grade 1 and failed grade 2 several times. I always say that my elementary school experience was very painful for me, because by the time I got to about grade 4, I went down to see the principal. Well, I went out to the smoking lounge to see the principal and have a cigarette with him, and just ask him that, apparently I'm going to be in elementary school a long time, so why don't we talk about parking, because apparently I'm going to be driving to school. So I was just not a successful student, and it was a painful period of time. And matter of fact, through that period of time, the sad part about it in the 60s, if you couldn't do the work, you weren't entitled to be in the classroom, and therefore my desk was placed outside the classroom. And that was detrimental not only to my self-esteem and self-worth, but also just learning how to read and write. As a matter of fact, by the time I was my age of 31 years old, I couldn't read or write. And so that was a skill that I was going to have to address later in life. Through that period of time, very early on, I was fighting already signs of almost like isolating. And believe it or not, I talk a lot. I know that comes as a shock to all of you, and being a politician and talking a lot, but my parents could see that I was really struggling because I was going to school, and in those days teachers were right. You just got to work harder. You got to do the things that are necessary. Anyways, I was struggling considerably, and I was really starting to isolate. My father thought it might be a good idea that I got a paper route and used my natural ability to be able to talk to people and use that skill. So when I was young, I got a paper route. It was the telegram at the time, and there's probably not many people around that remember the telegram, but that was the paper I delivered. And my father encouraged me to get the newspaper route, and we knew the 14 houses that I was delivering the newspaper to. It was a great job. I got cookies and hot chocolate at every doorstep, which was just fantastic. I don't get it here at City Hall. I don't know what that's all about, but we're working on it. But through that period of time also, one day I went into a gas station that was at the corner of Markham and Shepherd. It was cold and my papers were blowing around. And I never spoke about that day or that experience in that gas station because as a 7-year-old, I was raped by the individual that was in that gas station. And I carried a great deal of shame and never spoke about it until later in my life. And it was something that really impacted me tremendously. So along with my learning disability, now this issue, really kind of coming to terms with understanding who I was and what I was going through. I struggled all the way right through to about when I was about 13 years old, and my brother Michael, that was a police officer and joined the Toronto Police Force in 1967. In the month of July 1974, when I was 13 years old, our family was informed on that Sunday morning that my brother was killed. And he was an individual that played a significant role in regards to even my early days of who I was becoming. And he was my big brother, and it was I was just becoming kind of close to him. So that was a tremendous hit to me in regards to what was going on. I was dealing with my learning disability. I was learning with being bullied and beaten up every day at school. I was learning with being sexually abused when I was younger. I was dealing with it now an adoption, and I kind of understood what that meant. And then the death of my brother. And I really struggled about who I was and what I really represented and how I felt about myself. And I was introduced to alcohol at my brother's funeral, matter of fact. And that was really on a pathway that started me on a path of about a 17-year battle with addiction and mental health. And my addiction was very severe in alcohol. Then it changed over to drugs. And as you know, with many stories that you hear from addicts, we really do, if we do it to the extent that I did, you end up making sure that your family, your friends, your jobs, your bank account, everything is gone. And I was no different. I was mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, and spiritually broken. And I found myself living on the streets of Toronto when I was in my later part of my 20s, living on the streets. And those people that look terrible, smell terrible, and are begging you for money on the streets? Well, that was me. And it wasn't until June of 1991 when I was pretty sick by this time. And of course, my relationship with my parents was very strained. My relationship with my brother David was very strained. And my sister, it was strained, but she was also the only one that would really communicate with me at this time. And I called my sister in June of 1991 and just said, listen, I'm in a lot of trouble. I'm very sick. I don't know what to do. And she asked me to come and see her. I went to see my sister and she gave me two options. And that option was, one was either sober up, or number two is just accept the fact that I was going to die. And instinctively, I knew that those were the only two choices that I had. Now, I'm fortunate enough that I was able to get into a really good rehabilitation program. I was in the hospital for a year. By the time I arrived at the end of my addiction of mental health and addiction, and you have to understand, you don't see me right now, but I'm 6'2". I weigh about 210 pounds now. When I entered the hospital, I was about 110 pounds, 6'2". I was pretty sick. I had a hard time with solid foods. My system was just so broken. So I spent about a year in hospital, and I talked about all of those things that I had gone through: the rape, my adoption, really not understanding that, my learning disability, how ashamed I was that I couldn't read or write, just the struggle about coming to terms with who I was. And, you know, by the end of the year, I was mentally, emotionally, physically stronger, and I was equipped different so that I could come back and start making amends with my family and repairing our relationship. And I've worked at that for the last almost 30 years, about repairing relationships, undoing the wrongs, asking for forgiveness, asking for redemption, and really being public about my struggle. But the reason why I'm so public with my struggle is because I can't be any other way. This is who I am: broken, imperfect, an individual that is so not what it may appear. I am the person who I am, which is an individual that is a recovering alcoholic and drug addict, that has experienced homelessness and mental health and addiction and depression. But I work at it each and every day. And I'm lucky enough that people have been able to find forgiveness in their heart. The reason why I'm here today to be able to share that with you is not only because of the reason that I believe that hope played such a significant role in my life, but a lot of people contributed to my life in recovery. When I got into recovery, my father was early diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and I only had a very short period of time to be able to make amends and patch that relationship up with my mother and father. And that was an important step forward. But through that period of time, I was reminded that just in sobriety, it doesn't mean that just because you're sober, it means that everything's going to be okay. My counselor said to me the day that I left rehab, he said, "Danny, just remember this. Bad things happen to good people, and good things happen to bad people. And you should always remember that, and you should always make sure that you're strong in your foundation." And I didn't really understand what he said until May the 17th of 2000, when I was almost 9 years sober, almost 10 years sober. And I got a phone call at our house that my sister Maureen had made a decision and ended her life. And for somebody that really saved my life and really believed in me and supported me, it was devastating to me, because Maureen was a successful businesswoman that lived on the bridle path, that had all the trappings of life, that was a great giver, just a wonderful, glorious person that was 50 years old. And I thought she had the world by the tail. And what I didn't realize is that she was struggling with some issues that she was having. In 1974, when my brother was killed, shortly after that, she was in a car accident with her best friend on the 401, where their car broke down, and they pulled it over to the side of the road. And it was near Port Union Road and on the 401, and they started walking on the shoulder of the road, and a drunk driver came over and hit them both walking at 100 miles an hour. Almost killed my sister, but killed her girlfriend. And she carried that with her all her life. And I didn't realize the impact that had. And that event really impacted me tremendously. Now, I never picked up a drink, never took a drug, and I never steered away from the gift that she gave me, which was the opportunity to be a contributing member of society, a person that truly could be able to help others that are struggling. And I would never dishonor her by picking up a drink or a drug, because she saved my life. So I've spent the better part of that period of time advocating, educating, lobbying, hopefully inspiring people that all of us are going to go through struggles in life. All of us are going to lose people in our lives. All of us are going to have hardships and hurdles. We're going to be disappointed. We're going to lose the jobs that we love, where relationships may break down. We're going to lose brothers and sisters, parents, loved ones. We're not going to get the girl that we always wanted, or the guy we always wanted. We may not succeed in every aspect of it, but that's the journey of life. One of the books that I have on my desk, that sits on my desk, is this book. Now, I know it's probably backwards, but it's Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And this book plays a significant role in regards to me understanding that all of us go through unbelievable times. This book talks about being at a concentration camp, and the only thing that Viktor Frankl had to hold on to was hope. Hope that he would survive. Hope that he would see his family. Hope that he would have an opportunity to see another sunrise and a sunset. Hope that when this atrocity would end, that he would have an opportunity to be able to reunite with his wife and his child and his mother, his father, and his family. And what the book talks about is not only his time in Auschwitz, but also that he lost his mother, his father, his uncles, his wife, and his child. In some way, he took those experiences not only to survive that period of time, but he put a great question to all of us as we read this book. And the question is that we have to stop saying, why is this happening to us? And what does our life expect of us? And that really kind of put clarity to me about exactly what I was supposed to do. You see, I have to come to the conclusion, I'm a man of faith, I either have to come to the conclusion that the God I believe in is dark and evil and vengeful, or he's loving and light and forgiving. And I just can't believe that whoever created me comes from darkness. I have to believe that they come from light. So therefore, if I believe that, then I have to come to terms about why did I go through all of these events in my life? And the only conclusion that I can come up with is the reason why I went through all these events was because of the reason that my creator was creating me different than you. He was equipping me and creating me differently so that I would be able to serve differently. That my experiences would assist and help and support and encourage and hopefully inspire people to be able to address the issues that they have in their lives. I truly believe in my heart of hearts the reason why I went through all of these events in my life is not to be punished, but to be rewarded, and that I would do the right things with these gifts that I've been given. I find myself in this office as the mayor of the great city of Oshawa, not because of my perfection, because I'm so far away from it. I'm in this office because of my brokenness, and I believe that my brokenness, especially today, is relatable to today's society. What I hope to do is I hope to be able to take every opportunity that I have to inspire, motivate, share, lobby, educate people in regards to the struggles that we're finding today, and hopefully be able to come up with the right message to be able to say that we can do something about those that are dying on our streets from opiate poisoning. We can do something about poverty in our country. We can make sure that 34,000 people don't sleep on the streets nightly. We can be better to one another. We can truly understand that hope and optimism plays a significant role in regards to how we see our country, our community, and our neighborhoods. That's what I hope for. I'm a hopeful individual because the reason is that I would not be here today if it wasn't for hope, generosity, forgiveness, and redemption. Dwight Drummond from CBC came to see me when I got elected, and the media really loved this story. And the story was something like this. I don't know if you remember. It said, homeless man becomes mayor. And I kind of said, well, let me clarify that. Because I wasn't walking down the street homeless when they said, hey, what do you got going today? And I looked on my schedule and said, you know, I got nothing going on. And they said, well, you want to be mayor? I said, sure. But it made a great headline for the media. But I was interviewed by Dwight Drummond that comes from the Jane Finch area. And he said, you know, Danny, he said, 10 years ago, you would have never got elected. And I said, I know. And you would have never been an anchor at CBC 10 years ago. Isn't it wonderful that both of us have an opportunity to be gifted enough to have the chance to be able to serve our communities in the respective roles? Isn't it wonderful that a kid from Jane Finch can also be the CBC news anchor that has worked so hard and is a model, and people admire his work? Isn't it wonderful that we, all of us, have the opportunity to be able to contribute? So that's my message. My message is truly that I truly believe that I've got to stop saying, why is this happening to me? And what does my life expect of me? And I hope when I get to the gates that my creator is standing there and says this to me. You know, Danny, there was a couple times I thought you were going to come home early. I really did. But you pursued and you pushed through. And you know what? All I got to say is well done. If I get that at the gates, then I know my life has contributed to society, and I can be proud and my family can be proud. And I take that same approach as being a public servant. What I say, how I lead, the words I use, the talents I've got, how I lead my community is one of optimism, one of hope, one of light, and not of darkness. Even though we have darkness around us that continue to try and take the light out of our community. I want to be the mayor that people said he stood for hope. He made our community better. And you, as his grandchildren and as his children, can be proud of the service that he brought. So, Mr. Chairman, that is my presentation for this afternoon. I hope I didn't go on too long. And if there are any questions from any of our Rotarians today, I'd be more than willing to be able to answer any of them.
Thank you, Mayor. Has anybody got any questions, Basil?
Mayor Carter, I've heard your presentation before, and each and every time I listen to you, it brings hope. It makes us realize that our troubles are minor, insignificant, and we have a lot to pay back. Now, I have a serious question for you. Are you a BMX rider or a bulldozer operator?
You know, that's unfair. You know that. So because you brought it up, I got to address it. So we were informed just recently of a BMX park that was built, I guess, about 10 years ago on some city property, that they've cut down some trees and built this BMX trail. And we were unaware of it until just recently. And now I have to go out there this afternoon to be able to see what it looks like. We're trying to figure out the best path forward. There's a couple of issues. One is there was never a formal agreement for anybody to be able to utilize this area, and it's in a forest area. We weren't aware of it. You can't see it. You have to be taken to it. So one is we, as a city, we absolutely have to do our due diligence. But number one is we're going to have to find a way of finding out, you know, are we going to write an agreement to be able to allow the BMX bikers to use it? Number two is what type of liability are we willing to sign off on, and who's willing to take the liability? And number three is, because of the reason that a whole bunch of trees have been removed, that goes against the violation of the tree canopy, which CLOCA controls. And under normal circumstances, you can be fined up to $10,000 a tree. And we need to get that resolved. So we're hoping that this afternoon, if I get a chance to get out to that park, to be able to actually see it and meet with organizers and see if we can find a resolution in regards to it. But thank you very much for that question. I greatly appreciate it.
Hey, Dave Hardy.
Thank you, Mayor Carter. That's a inspirational talk, and really appreciate it. What's your relationship between folks that are marginalized and homeless or drug addicted in Oshawa? You must be able to talk to them and resonate with kind of where they're at.
So Dave, thank you very much for the question. Yeah, there is an opportunity to make a connection. For me, it was just being able to really understand what services were necessary that we had to do that we've never provided before. And that was how I was able to advocate. I mean, since COVID, believe it or not, we have gone from about 60 individuals that are addicted to drugs, and well, 90% of them are, 93% matter of fact, that have a complex mental health issue and that are unsheltered, about 60 individuals. We're now up to 300 through COVID. And we're not unusual. A lot of the communities across Canada are seeing the same thing, the complexities. What we have seen is the complexities of the illnesses of individuals. So my experiences has been able to advocate for certain programs that we're being able to implement. One is we brought a housing program in, got them up to what we call as IOTC, out of the cold program, to be able to support them and then help them get into the right pathway of care. For those that aren't participating at all, we've set up a hub in our downtown that provide mental health services, addiction services, housing services, Ontario Work Services, psychological services, and physician for medical care. So we've set that up in downtown. We've created 2 outreach teams, well, 3 outreach teams really, one that's called Welcoming Streets that have workers out on the street to make contact with those individuals. We also started 2 years ago a program called the PCOP program, which is a paramedic and a social worker that work in a vehicle that go into the tent cities and try and help those individuals. And then our third component was working with Ontario Community Health Center about our hepatitis C outreach team. So we've got multiple approaches. My struggle right now, Dave, to be absolutely honest, is this population of unsheltered individuals are being victimized by the criminal element that are coming here and selling their poison. And I said on CTV last week, or earlier this week, I said, I will not tolerate that. I will not tolerate people coming here to victimize people that are already struggling with addiction, mental health, and unshelteredness, and selling their poison and killing these people on the streets. They don't have the right to do it. So I've demanded that the police crack down on people that are dealing drugs and breaking into businesses and terrorizing people and assaults, all those kind of things. But my main concern is those that are assistance or looking for assistance of being unsheltered, mental health, addiction, physical health, I will go to the absolute wall because I've been there before. And so making those connections with people in the homeless population, believe it or not, know my story. So, I've got a little bit of credibility with them. And so that helps a little bit. But thank you for the question, Dave.
Anybody else? Maybe? Maybe you're on mute.
That's a gift when I'm on mute. Mayor Carter, thank you so much for your candid and very inspirational story. Truly touched as an adoptive mother myself. My question, my daughter just graduated high school and started at Western, but I have seen the ravages of drug addiction, mental health with high school kids. What is it that you personally have done? And I'm not challenging you or putting you on the spot. I'm truly curious within your community to address it from a young age, because it's so easily available. Alcohol, weed, I'm learning a lot of new other terms as well. Yeah.
So there's a couple of things. One is I share my story as much as I possibly can, especially with elementary and high schools. So I've done that. That's been ongoing for 20 years now. So really to be a figure of being able to say, that's our mayor. And by the way, did you know? And a lot of people go, really? Kind of thing. So that's good. My wife and myself set up an organization about 15 years ago called the Day of Hope and Leadership. One of the ways that I looked at was, what if we could create a kind of an environment where youth could go after school and be supported through healthcare, mentorship, leadership programs, youth food support programs. So we created an organization called the Day of Hope and Leadership, and we held conferences for 12 years and raised money for a center called the Hope Center of Learning in the south end of Oshawa, where we have our highest concentration of poverty and addiction. And we donated over $1 million to that center to be able to support programs for youth. My whole approach was to try and have influences outside of the family unit to be able to support individuals and give them a different opportunity to see things could change. So really a big part of what I wanted to try and do was really kind of give them the resources that they needed, support them through mentorship programs, create leadership programs, but also just meet their basic needs. They need help with their homework. They don't have a computer. They're hungry. We feed them. Yeah. We even have a band, the worst band in the world, but kids that come from economically challenged communities or families that could never afford that. We have mentors that go in and try and help kids with it. So it's about changing the expectation and really investing in individuals. And what you're trying to do is you're really trying to create new disciples with a different type of an approach, because many individuals that come from challenging backgrounds, they get into the realm of it's always going to be this way and it's always been this way. And we need to break that cycle. And we need to be able to break the cycle of saying, no, not another generation. We're not accepting another generation to go down that path. And so we've got to try and get at the front end of it. And I think that some of those efforts and some of our investments are paying dividends. And I'm hoping that we continue to do that, but that's why mentorship plays such an important part.
Thank you.
You got another question?
Yeah.
Mayor Carter, that was truly inspiring, and I think it connects with all of us. Oshawa's had some interesting times in the last few years with the shutdown of GM and those sorts of things. And you're trying to deliver even more services than is available. How are you coping? I know that's a very broad question, but
so I'll share with you. I was in office. I wasn't even sworn into office, and the announcement came from GM, and it was just days before I was being sworn into office. And my campaign manager was at a dinner with me about a week later, and he said, "This is our new mayor, Mayor Carter. He's been on the job for less than a week, and he's already lost 2,500 jobs. Can't wait to see what he does next week." And so it was really devastating to our community. It was 110 years of history of the automobile industry, and really seeing the impact that it had on our community, and it was devastating. So the one is understanding why those decisions were made, and then number two is then what do you do out of a bad situation? How do you try and make it as best as you possibly can? Remember, the decision by General Motors to stop production in Oshawa was a decision that was made in Detroit. It wasn't made in Canada. All decisions in regards to operations for GM are made in Detroit. They're not made in Canada. So it was really saying, okay, so what do we do? Now that 2,500 people have lost their job, what do we do? And so I tried to work with the provincial, the federal government, our local government, and of course GM and the executives in the United States. We were able to get $170 million investment in GM. We were able to create about 450 jobs. We also got an autonomous track that was built, and we'll kind of work with our post-secondary education. But really it comes down to is that you cannot, even in the worst circumstances, you can't go, well, we're done. We're done. That's it. 110 years history. What I tried to reiterate to the public through me communicating was over 100 years, the automobile industry has changed rapidly at each chapter. Each chapter, we went from, thousands of people on the line to be able to put an automobile together to a couple thousand people building sophisticated computers on wheels. And at each stage, we had to change what we did, and that meant that we had to adapt. We had to face the challenges. We had to innovate. We had to really be honest with ourselves and say, how can we move forward? And I reminded our community every single time that we have faced challenge after challenge after challenge over 100 years, and we have never failed. And we're not going to fail now. So as mayor, it was keeping people optimistic. On the other side of the coin is doing everything I possibly can to attract business and attract dollars invested in our community. But I'm also a fiscal conservative. So I'm a fiscal conservative. I have a socialist heart, and I got a lot of liberal friends. So I kind of got all the bases covered. A big part of it is, how do we rebuild? And what are the foundational pieces we have, and continue to remind people of those great pieces? We've got 124 countries that are represented at our colleges and university. We have 11,000 people that work in the healthcare industry in our community. We have a post-secondary education that our college alone has over 20,000 students and over 35,000 students full and part-time. Our university really has over 20,000 students. We're really starting to build that. Now, what do we do with that is how I have to engage the community, engage business, and say, this is where you should be, because I've got representatives from 124 different countries around the world that are well-educated, that are smart, that are young, and that are energetic. Why don't you move here? So that's what I've been trying to do, David.
Thank you very much.
You've got another question, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Trudy had her hand up as well, but Mayor, just to pick up on your last comment, Rotary about 7 or 8 years ago started to do basic community organizing in Scarborough. We realized that we need to take advantage of growing our economy contributing to the quality of life of our residents and so on. Yeah, we're growing population-wise. In 2041, we should be close to 900,000 people in Scarborough. We started the Scarborough Business Association, and so that's a Rotary kind of started organization. We started the Scarborough Renewal Organization as well. And these organizations have been saying, we can't just think about Scarborough, we need to think about the Eastern GTA as well. And so how does Scarborough, and like everybody talks to each other now, that's one thing Rotary's really helped. We've got the residents groups, the social agencies, the institutions, the cultural groups, and the businesses. They all talk now. And so we're saying, how do we take advantage and partner with other municipalities in the Eastern GTA? Because what benefits Oshawa benefits Scarborough and vice versa. And I'm not sure if you have a solution, but kind of to leave that with you, that there's a willingness to have stronger relationships with residents right across the Eastern GTA.
Well, I think there's two things. One is communication and opening up the lines of communication and welcoming people into the tent is very, very important. And congratulations for doing that. I always call it hostage negotiations. As long as people are speaking and talking, you're always moving forward. It's when people stop talking that ideas die. So first and foremost, I think that's a great initiative that you've undertaken. I also think that COVID-19, believe it or not, has really brought the importance of community back up. And really, we are now speaking to our neighbors. How dare we speak to our neighbors? We'll get out of it. Like, we're actually saying hello to people. We're actually checking on our neighbors, So COVID has really brought that forward. And I think there's going to be a national conversation about how are we as a society and as a communities all across Canada, what are we going to do with this moment about rebuilding our economy, rebuilding our communities, rebuilding our infrastructure? And I don't think we'll ever get caught flat-footed again, because I think that this, believe it or not, I just came up to my council meeting and I have to wear this in council, which is a mask. I have to wear a mask. This is a really big part of where our new society is today. So I think that, to be absolutely honest, I think that this moment, we've got to grasp onto it and do unique things like you've been speaking about, Dave. But I also think that what you should do is share your story as much as you possibly can with also surrounding municipalities and say, this is what we're doing, and we'd like to introduce you to it, but also we'd like to invite you into the process so that we can learn about things that you're doing. And by encouraging one another, it's almost like you're trying to figure out the best practices together. And I think that when you invite people into the process, it's amazing what happens. And Dave, do yourself a favor. When you're having these conversations, put a criteria together that you're not allowed to say, no, you can't do that. And because people go, well, we don't have the money, we don't have the people, we don't have the capacity, we don't have, no. And when you set the tone up and say, you are not allowed, in this conversation, you're not allowed to say no. So you have to address difficult situations, but you cannot say no. So it really kind of forces people to go, yeah, but and you go, whoa, what did I say? And they go, okay, all right. It's going to be difficult. Yes, it is going to be difficult. So let's talk about the difficulty. And why is it going to be difficult? And how do we change that equation? And what can we do to be a part of that? So I think that's some of the concepts that I would work on, just to let you know.
Thank you.
Okay, one more question from Trudy, and then I think we better, in the interest of time, we better finish.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Trudy.
Thank you, Mayor, for sharing your story. It's certainly very, very inspiring. I would love to know, I'm very curious, I think you gave us kind of a half story. I would like to know the beginning of the story of hope, where you get out of hospital and then how you get back to school, for example, and then how do you become a TV star and how do you become a mayor, that kind of journey of hope. I think it would be also very inspiring. I know you can't tell that right now, yeah. But is there like a resource or maybe a YouTube video or something that I can refer to learn the rest of your story? Thank you.
So there's a couple things. One is I've written a book, and so that book is called It's the Right Time Now. And there'll be a second book that'll be coming out because a lot of people have said we need to know more and we want to see more. And I wrote that book for a couple different reasons. One, it was very therapeutic for me to come to terms with everything. But I think I wrote it too early in my life. So I'm going to go back and rewrite the book again. No, there isn't a YouTube. People always ask me, and it's a great question, and they say, so how did that, how do you go from not being able to read and become, a talk show host? And I say enthusiasm and ignorance is my key. Enthusiasm because I'm an enthusiastic person, and ignorance because I never realized that there's a whole bunch of steps I was supposed to take that I didn't take. And so I kind of ended up, it really comes down to is one is, I think, just addressing my shortcomings and saying, oh, how do I start? And one of the things that happened to me was when I was in treatment, they asked me to read, and I was so embarrassed that I couldn't read. And they come up to me afterwards and said, what's the story? And I told them what happened. And my counselor at the time, he said, who's the one person in life you'd really like to meet? And I said, Martin Luther King. Everything about what I've heard about him is that's a person that I want. And you could probably see in my office that I have a few Martin Luther King pictures in my office here. So when I went to my next session, he said, I have a friend of mine I want you to meet. And I said, who's that? And he handed me the autobiography of Martin Luther King. And he said, Martin Luther King, meet my friend Dan Carter. Dan Carter, meet Martin Luther King. And what it did is it changed my perspective about what reading was and what it could give me. And then it forced me, because he said, I need you to try and read a page a day. And I stumbled and fumbled, and I was horrible at it. But once I faced my fear, it gave me a chance to be able to move forward. As a television guy, somebody came to me and said, Danny, you'll talk to anybody. You know what you should do is you should do a TV show. Oh, yeah, all right. And, being, again, enthusiastic and ignorant to the fact, I walked down to Rogers Television and said, hey, I want to be a TV star. And they went, yeah, right. I said, well, I got a whole bunch of friends that are well-known Canadians, and I think I can interview them. And by the way, I have $25,000 worth of sponsorship money. And they said, you're onto something. This is a good idea. And they gave me an opportunity. And through that process, I learned on the job. And I faked it until I made it. And then people like Ken Shaw and Joe Tilley and Dave Duvall and Lance Brown and all these people played a significant role in encouraging me to continue to the point where I was sitting across from Paul McCartney and doing an interview and speaking to the Prime Minister Harper and meeting stars from all over the world, where I just sat there and went, can you believe it? But Trudy, what I did is my natural ability to be inquisitive gave me the opportunity to be an interviewer. And when I interviewed people, I never have any notes because I want to learn about them. And what happens is, by learning about them, I learned a lot about me. And what happened was, it educated me. I don't have a formal education. I have a grade 8 education. Behind me on my wall is I have a certificate from Ontario Tech University giving me a Doctor of Laws. That's crazy. But it's about facing my fear, being honest with myself, and just trying. And I think that's the only thing I can tell you is enthusiasm and ignorance get you a long way. Just be passionate about what you want to achieve, and don't allow anybody to tell you it can't be done. It may not end up to be exactly what you want, but through that journey, you're going to be on some really interesting paths. I always thought I was going to be a great actor. I suck. I mean, I'm horrible. But as an interviewer, I'm very good. And that gave me an opportunity to be able to serve my community, and in turn give me an opportunity to be able to be elected.
Okay, thank you. Alan, you're scheduled to thank the Mayor formally, please.
President Good. Well, Mayor Dan, or should I call you Mayor Carter?
No, Mayor Dan's good. I like that.
It's been a very inspirational speech from you today. I can tell by the intelligent questions we've been getting from some of the members. Sometimes they don't ask intelligent questions, but today's questions seem to be very intelligent. So it's been great having you with us today. Pity we weren't there in person, because we can't laugh at your jokes the same as, you know, we can when we're actually in a meeting. And but it's been very, very interesting listening to you. I have heard you before, so I did know part of what you've said in the past, but I had to leave last time. I had another engagement. I think I had to go and play golf, actually. I can't remember.
Oh.
So I only heard about half an hour or so of your last time you were on. But it's been fabulous having you speak today, and we hope you carry on your good work, and we'll try and help in any way we can with a lot of programs that we have within Rotary to help youth and adults and addiction programs, etc. You know, so thanks again for coming out and speaking to, or not coming out, but being there to speak to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mayor, we have other business to attend to. You're welcome to hang around, so to speak, but I'm sure you got other stuff to go to. So
I've got to go back to council,
yeah.
So I've got about another 3 hours in council, and then I'm apparently going to see a BMX park.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, take care, everybody. God bless.
Bye.
Bye.